Begin Self-Publishing, episode number 5. Reasons to self-publish and reasons not to.
Interested in self-publishing but don't know where to start? Want to get your book onto Amazon? Want to hold your paperback book in your hands? Learn how on the Begin Self-Publishing podcast with your host, Tim Lewis.
When people talk about self-publishing, they often talk about this stereotype of frustrated authors who, for whatever reason, either couldn't be accepted by publishing companies to have their novels published or chose to print out a large selection of books and stick them in their garage and try and sell them to friends. However, in the modern age, since print on demand and e-books, there are several reasons why people might want to self-publish, and there are a few reasons why you might not want to. Clearly, as this show is about self-publishing, there will be more reasons I prescribe for self-publishing than not self-publishing. One of the major factors, certainly when it comes to ebooks, is the fact that there's actually much more money available if you self-publish than if you go through a traditional publishing contract. Other things being equal, you will make more money for the same number of sales for an ebook that you self-publish than if you go through a publishing contract. This makes sense because you're taking the risk of the publication yourself rather than the publishing house taking it. The reason why they take so many risks on authors is because they make large amount of profits off the authors. At the moment, it seems that ebook royalties are as low as 20 or 25% if you go through a publishing house. And as we've discussed before, they can be up to 70% per copy sold for an ebook if you self-publish a book on Kindle. For print books, the case is less clear-cut. You are up against the fact that many of the big publishing houses still do large print runs and therefore can keep their costs down. There's no reason to stop a self-published author from doing a large print run, but then you are left with the fact that you've got to maintain a big warehouse full of books, and that's not necessarily such an easy thing to do. Another reason for self-publishing, which many people don't appreciate, is that it's a great way to create a reputation. You probably heard the expression, this person wrote the book on the topic. When literally now you can decide whether you are the person who writes a book on a particular subject. Say that you're the expert on marshmallow production in the 19th century France. Now obviously you can start a blog or a podcast about that, and that will give you some amount of authority on it. But because of the sheer perceived difficulty and the historic gatekeeper nature of publishing, if you self-publish a book about the history of marshmallows in the 18th century, then you, almost by definition, become a leading expert on that. The ability to publish a book on a niche subject area allows you to instantly jump yourself up to become the expert in that topic area. Now obviously the quality needs to be to a certain standard, but you'd be surprised how people have done this just with fairly low quality books. Simply being the only book on a particular subject gives you credence. So when the organisers of Marshmallow World 2015 are looking for somebody to be their expert on 18th century marshmallows, who are they going to call? They're going to call you because you wrote the book on it. So it's certainly in the marketing side of things, people are using books as a marketing tool. This dovetails in with the influence building point. You'll often see people who are trying to sell courses or other more expensive items writing a book as a way of marketing their larger course. It's like, here's a taster of the information that I'm going to tell you about 18th century marshmallows. If you want to learn more, then go on to my course. Many people will tell you they want to learn about book marketing, but often For many people, the book is the marketing tool that they use to lead people onto other things. This is in many reasons why book writing is actually quite a good way to get into online business, because the Amazon site itself has many built-in marketing tools. Once you get your book into an Amazon chart, it will begin to be bought by other people. And if it's good enough, then people will recommend it to other people they know, and they'll see it on the also bought section on Amazon. If you look at any Amazon product page, there's a section at the bottom where it says, people who bought this also bought this. If your book has been selling in a particular chart or particular category, and people have seen it in the chart, they will buy that book after having already bought books in the other books in that chart. This means that if you get prolonged exposure in the Amazon ebook store, then your book will start to sell from people who have bought other books in that chart and see, oh, they've also bought your book about 18th century marshmallow manufacture. So Amazon itself is a marketing tool if used correctly. The question many people talk about when it comes to marketing is how do you get your book into that chart in the first place? And as I've said, that's not my intention to go into that area in this podcast, at least not to begin with. Another non-financially based reason to self-publish is a great way to get out views into the world which, for whatever reason, may not be the sort of thing that a traditionally published company would want to publish. As long as you're not profane or you don't say any racial hate thing or anything like that, then Amazon will probably publish your views on a variety of topics and areas. If you want to write dinosaur erotica, then you can, and people have done this. 50 Shades of Grey, of course, is a fantastic example of this, even though erotica and that kind of thing has been published for years. But erotica has clearly exploded in the online ebook world because it's far easier to be anonymous and become an erotica author as a self-publisher. So you can say what you like about virtually anything. Now, some people will question this and say, oh, look at the next awful self-published dinosaur erotica book. But I don't have a problem with this. To me, the people who complain about self-published authors publishing what they like are the same sort of people who have said that women shouldn't have the vote. Yes, there might have been consequences to the change, but I don't think anybody is seriously suggesting that we go back to a gatekeeper model. We have some Amazon review panel of experts who decide which books can and can't be published on Amazon. Such a move would be stupid. One interesting trend in self-publishing is that many authors are using self-published books as a way to get a traditional book deal. This would have seemed mad even 5-10 years ago, when it was self-published authors had a stigma in the traditional book world. However, from a traditional publisher's point of view, this makes a fantastic amount of sense. And I could even see that the time comes when traditional book publishers will have expected you to have self-published a novel before they will take you on. This comes back to the risk element. If you're a traditional publisher, you may think you have the world's best book selectors and the best people for picking out commercial winners. But in reality, there have been lots of traditionally published books which have just stood on a bookshelf for 1 week and then ended up in this dreaded slush pile of paperback books which are sold off cheap or returned to the publishers. Because of the fact that the traditional publishers, being human, aren't necessarily that good at picking winners either, it may well move to the fact that they can pick up already successful self-published authors who've had huge sales on Kindle, offer them traditional book deals, and then they're almost certainly backing a winner. They've already started moving in this direction in terms of expecting authors to have large Twitter followings and other social media footprints before they will pick them up. If somebody has already self-published a book and made the effort to get it professionally edited, get a decent cover design, and learnt the marketing tools needed to get a book into the Amazon chart, then they're a much better prospect to be picked up by a publisher than somebody who has done none of this, has just sent off their manuscript blindly. So bizarrely, self-publishing might be the best way to get a traditional book deal. That's something that interests you.
You're listening to the Begin Self-Publishing Podcast with Tim Lewis.
Reasons not to self-publish. One reason not to self-publish is this expectation of instant wealth and success. There may well have been a time, around 2010, 2011 time in the US, where people could literally put up a book quickly that they cobble together in Microsoft Word, do no proofreading or editing or any kind of quality control on the document, shove it into the Amazon store, and because of the lack of any decent books, it would sell and they would make a lot of money out of it. Sadly, this is no longer the case. If you do this, it will just look like somebody who's shoved up a cheap and dirty book onto Amazon. It's worth spending the time to get the book right. In terms of instant riches online, there are far better ways than writing a book. Generally speaking, if you want to make money online, your best bet is to try and sell larger, more expensive products, like training courses or large software products, rather than expecting to make money out of books. If you love writing and you want to write fiction, then you can make money out of self-published books. And similarly with non-fiction, if you're an expert in a particular area, you can make money out of book selling. However, I wouldn't necessarily recommend expecting huge returns instantly. It will take time to make money out of books, but it's certainly possible. But I wouldn't go into book selling with the expectation of a massive fortune coming down the road. It's still a lot of work. The other reason to go with a traditional book deal is if you are very keen to have your book available in local bookstores. It is possible to get your book into bookstores as a self-published author, but it does require quite a considerable amount of work and tenacity. And you're instantly at a disadvantage compared to traditionally published authors who have a company behind them that knows how to get their book into bookstores. The other reason not to self-publish is that however you do it, there is a certain amount of common sense and business skill required to do it. Even if you go for a service that claims to do all of the work for you, you have to be very sensible and do the due diligence of looking into that company's background. There are an awful lot of scam companies in the self-publishing area. At the very best, they'll provide you a shoddy book where they've outsourced the editing to somebody who barely speaks English in the third world, charges you for expensive marketing packages, which you could do yourself for about a third of the price. If you want to be a bit more tuned into the services available and what works and what doesn't work, there are a couple of websites like Writer Beware and David Gogren's blog, and also the Alliance of Independent Authors, who write quite substantially on which companies to avoid in this area. If you choose to go down the cheapest but most time-consuming route of finding the suppliers for yourself, for say book cover design and editing, this does require a certain amount of having to deal with people. However, it's not that difficult, and it's a useful set of skills to build up. For me, it's introduced me to the online business community in a way that I was totally unaware that it even existed until I started my journey towards self-publishing. Almost whatever you need to do, you will need to learn marketing skills. As I've said before, the traditional publishers are already looking for signs of social media activity or previous success, or what they would call a platform. A group of people who will rush out and buy your book as soon as it's available. This is the holy grail in terms of publishing in general. Self-publishers need to build a platform, but traditional publishers often look for people with an existing platform. So let's say you're a famous US celebrity. You might be like a cage fighter or somebody, and you've got 1 million fans on Twitter. You are far more likely to get a book publishing deal than somebody who might be the most talented writer in history, but they have no followers, they have no idea about marketing whatsoever. The cage fighter might well end up with more book sales. This is the reason why the traditional publishers would probably approach them rather than the greatest writer in history who hasn't made any effort to learn marketing or do any kind of promotional stuff. Traditional publishers will get your book into the bookstores and they will do some amount of marketing for you. But at the end of the day, whichever route you're going to go, you're going to need to learn marketing. However, in terms of the actual process of finding editors and book cover designers and the general organisation you would need to start self-publishing your own books, and if this is something you really don't want to do, then maybe you shouldn't self-publish. However, I would say for most people, these are worthwhile skills to learn, because this is the way the world is turning. We're moving from an economy where people do what they're told to where people have to be proactive. And when we're moving from an economy of employed people to self-employed people, do you want to be the person who's employed and then suddenly made redundant and has no idea what to do with the rest of their life? Or do you want to be the person who's already dabbled in self-employment in terms of self-publishing? That's it for this week. I'm not entirely sure what next week's episode will be about. I may well attempt to try and self-publish my Magpies and Magic book using the Ingram Spark service. If I've done that, it'll be about that. If not, it'll be about some other topic to do with self-publishing. See you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please stop by iTunes and rate and leave a review. This helps make the show more visible. For free resources, show notes, and other helpful content, join the community at beginselfpublishing.com.